Hi, my name's Joanna Bird. I'm with the executive director with NASW-PA, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Um, the representative should be joining us in a little bit, but wanted to, the point of today is to talk about the social work compact and where the bill is and the progress, et cetera, on that. Do you want to introduce a couple of people who are with us today? Our president is joining us again. President McNeil, do you want to say hi?
Yes, good morning, everyone. So glad to see that you all are here for today's session. You can't see it. I'm in my office today, but I do have a shirt on that talks about Our Voices Matter, just keeping up with the spirit of LEAD. And
Mhm.
so very excited to be here today and very excited to have this conversation.
Also want to introduce Natalie Cook.
Morning, everybody. I know Angie will be joining us shortly. She was stuck in another meeting.
Yep, no problem. Um, all right, so I want to talk a little bit more in depth about the social work compact, and then get some input from our team about like maybe some of the reasons why they support this bill or how it can impact Pennsylvania a bit more directly. Um, but I'll start off with kind of introducing everything. Oh, and I see that Representative Abney is joining us too. So let me introduce him as well. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning. Good morning. I apologize. My wife is on the call at the same time as me, and they are doing construction outside of my house. So it's just one of those days. So apologies. Noise.
No, no problem, no problem. Um, anyway, I was just going to get started talking a little bit about the bill itself, and then I'll pass the torch over to you. All right, so this started a few years ago, like in 2021, 2022-ish, where other professions have entered into interstate compact as a way of having license portability. Others you might have heard of include the nursing compact, the psychology compact, etc. So this has been something that has been effective with other professions. NASW along with ASWB, and the Department of Defense were interested in starting one for social work because license portability for social workers has always been a significant issue, and especially even more so now that telehealth is significant. Um, where things don't always neatly cross state lines, and patients like clients can move from place to place, or go to college, or be on vacation or whatever, and it doesn't always make sense for licensure to only be within a specific region or area. So, and the Department of Defense was involved initially because of military spouses, and in particular, where military spouses who went with their soldiers had to like restart their profession every time they moved, and every time their spouse was stationed somewhere else. So the Department of Defense got involved in creating these compacts. We worked NASW, ASWB worked with the Council of State Governments to create a social work compact. And then the way that it works is that it has to pass identical language in every state that it happens. The first state passed it 2 years ago in 2023. Just the first year that the legislation was available, that was Missouri. And then the following year, an additional 21 states passed it. We had to get to 7 in order to have the compact start to be active. and far exceeded that target last year. Pennsylvania is now one of 18 additional states who are trying to get it passed, who have active legislation right now. So with that introduction, Rep. Abney, I wanted to pass it over to you to talk a little bit about this issue and why it's significant to you.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you, Jonna, and thank you all for having me. It is always good to be amongst fellow social workers, especially when I think I say this all the time. I'm in a profession where I'm up in Harrisburg, where there aren't too many of us. I think I'm the only elected member of the legislature that has a degree in social work. So I have my MSW from University of Pittsburgh. So this is obviously a topic that is near and dear to my heart. Being someone who always reminds folks that even though I am a duly elected official, have always portrayed myself and always will remind everybody that I'm a social worker first. Was a social worker before I got elected. Will continue to be a social worker while I'm in this position, and whatever the next steps are for me in the future, I will continue to be a social worker. So I always lead with that. So it's good to be in a safe place, in a safe space amongst fellow social workers. And I think I may have done this last year. I think you might have done this similar last year. And so and I think you do this back to back with the press conference, right? So I'm hoping that some of the folks who are on this call will be able to see you all in person on Tuesday. Yes, I'm waiting for some Tuesday. Um, so yeah, so this is something that is very personal. For me, this is I think when we first introduced this last session. I think Johnny kind of referenced this, but I think there was more than one. Maybe there was a handful. Maybe it was less than seven. Because I remember having a conversation like, we might still be able to make it. We might be able to still get in the top seven. Because the concept is that those first seven will be able to help sort of create sort of what the interstate sort of compact, what it would look like, and some of the definitions and the yays and nays portion of it, almost like a sort of a board type of thing. But as Johnny mentioned, we're a little bit behind. What number are we at now? What's the total? You said 21?
22 passed it, and another 18 working right now, some of whom who have very short legislative sessions, so they'll be making their decisions quickly.
Got you. So I'm not sure if you flagged this before I got on the call, but the issue in Pennsylvania is, so I'll say this, it's not for a lack of folks across the aisle, on both sides of the aisle, who want to get this done, because this is really a bipartisan issue in the sense that there isn't any elected official that doesn't have social workers in their county in Pennsylvania. And, this and folks obviously understanding, especially post-pandemic, the benefits of what the social work profession means for, folks who are going through therapy or, are needing an outlet for someone to talk to when it comes to their mental health. And so this is a bipartisan issue, and we've talked with folks, Republicans in the Senate, who have said that they want to support legislation like this. I think that there is sister legislation in the state Senate that has been a co-sponsorship memo. I'm not sure if it's been dropped yet, but I know there's conversations around that happening. So there is momentum. The thing that we really ran into as far as a roadblock last year, there were some issues. And again, if you mentioned this already, John, please forgive me. With the FBI background clearances. And so I have the fortune, now that we've reintroduced it this session, House Bill 554, I have the fortune of being able to also sit on the Appropriations Committee. And so we had the opportunity, I want to say maybe two or 3 weeks ago, we had the Department of State, the Secretary of the Department of State was there. And one of the topics that I raised was about interstate compacts. And so they've been working with the FBI and others to kind of get us over that hurdle. And it's my understanding from his answer to me, it was a little vague, but from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Angie or others, that we are like at the goal line. Like there's things have been approved with the FBI, but there's maybe one or two small little things that need to get done.
The way
I'll
it
let you.
looks to me is that the IT systems are talking.
Yeah.
We're at the point now where the IT systems are beginning to share that information. So progress, it's progress.
I can't remember if you used the example or somebody used the example of with the IT things and making sure that they're on the same page. It's like trying to drive a car while fixing it at the same time, right? So you got to make sure that it's not an easy thing to do. And so, but I will tell you, this is as close as we've been to getting this done. And I am very optimistic that we will be able to get this through this session. I have spoken with the chair of the House Democrats and Professional Licensure Committee. They want to run, there's a series of licensure compact bills that are sitting in his committee right now that they kind of want to run as a package once they get this approved. And then similarly, the Republican chair in the Senate of the professional licensure, I think they call it a different committee, but essentially the same committee. The timeline that he projected in his mind was after the budget, after we pass this budget, this fall when we come back is likely when we'll have everything ready to go. And so I am very optimistic. What I would encourage folks on this call to do is to continue to make phone calls, continue to do the outreach, continue to do the advocacy beyond coming up to Harrisburg next week. Continue to make the phone calls and to the chairs of these committees and make sure that their messaging back to you all is consistent. We don't want some one person saying, yeah, we think we can get it this session, and then somebody saying, no, there's no chance to do it. So we want to make sure that we are holding all of our elected officials, myself included, accountable for getting this done. Because as was mentioned earlier, the licensure portability thing is a major deal. We know that folks, for whatever reasons, whether it be personal or professional, they move from state to state. We live in a very transient society now, where one day you could have a job in one state, and then next you get offered somewhere else. And if you have clients who are in that state, and you are not licensed in the state that you were going, it presents a lot of challenges for you to be able to continue that to have that continuum of care. And we want to ease that burden both for social workers, but also for the folks that we serve and for our clients who may not want to have to find a new person where they've made progress with the social worker that they're currently with. And then, in addition to that, it's the job creator. It's the economies of scale that we are creating. We in Pennsylvania, we are always looking to attract more um, people into our workforce who when they are deciding, hey, I have an opportunity to move to Pennsylvania, or I have an opportunity to move to one of these other 22 states that are in this compact, and I'm a social worker. Am I going to pick the one that doesn't have the compact? Or am I going to pick the one that does have the compact, right? And so we want to make sure that we are just as competitive as others. So when we are trying to do everything that we can to attract folks to Pennsylvania, this is just yet one more reason where we can attract particularly folks in the social work profession, because we know that they are definitely needed. And so I guess I will pause there. Again, I'm very optimistic. I'm excited to be this close. I think we had a good number of co-sponsors for this legislation. I know we're still trying to get some more, so the momentum is growing, and hopefully we can get this done this session.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So that does relate directly back to one of the things I was going to either mention or ask you about, which is, of course, as you mentioned, our press conference is next week, and additionally, we have a whole bunch of visits scheduled for our attendees to see their representatives and their senators. Like one of the things we're mentioning is to ask, as far as the ask for that visit, is for them to sign on as co-sponsors. And if they do sign on as co-sponsors, they just need to contact your office, correct?
Yep, they can do that. We can get them on whether they contact our office or they should have in their emails a co-sponsored memo should still be available for them to add themselves on. But we're happy to help assist to make sure they get on there.
And that especially is true of that we want to demonstrate the bipartisan nature of this bill by having members of both parties sign on as co-sponsors, which we do have now. It is officially bipartisan in the House, where we do have a Republican co-sponsor. Representative Stair has signed on. Not sure if anybody else has yet. And then, like you said, it is officially in co-sponsor memo stage in the Senate, which I know is like a confusing phrase to say it's in, that the bill exists, but it's in co-sponsor memo phase. It's basically a time when a legislator in Pennsylvania introduces a bill or introduces their intent to file a bill and gives others the opportunity to sign on. So our senators, in particular, Senator Pennycook, has released the co-sponsor memo. Senator Pennycook is a career military person who, kind of really understood what we were talking about from the military spouse perspective. But also like supports, license portability in general and continuity of care and all of the things that Representative Abney was just talking about. So with our senators, when you talk to your senators, you're going to be asking them to sign on to Senator Pennycook's co-sponsor memo. And then to do that, they would contact Senator Pennycook's office. Rep. Avni, do you have anything to add about like the nature of those co-sponsor memos that might make it a little clearer for our attendees?
No, but I'm looking at a question that is coming up in the chat, and I'm assuming that's directed for this. So there is no opposition at this time in terms of the legislation. We're running into just some technical delays. We wouldn't be able to sort of push the bill through until those technical delays are dealt with and confirmed with the Department of State and the FBI. But and I want to make sure you weren't asking the question, what is the challenge in terms of support for co-sponsors? So the challenge with that is there are, I would say, on any given day, even when we're not in session, there's at least 100, close to like 100 bills that could be co-sponsorship memos that can get circulated. And literally, if you have to sift through your emails to find each one of them, so then um, it becomes incumbent on, once the request for co-sponsorships has been sent out via email, that, each legislator has their own process. Like there, you'll see some legislators who are on the floor of the House when everybody's there with a list of all the people who have co-sponsored, all people who haven't, and then they will go and say, "Hey, by the way, you didn't co-sponsor my bill. Would you mind?" And they kind of put the pressure on them that way, or they'll send email reminders out and say, "Hey, just letting you know, Representative Abney is getting ready to introduce this bill next week. If you want to consider, in case you missed it, we're re-upping it." Or we will have organizations like you all. As Jana mentioned, they were very instrumental in getting the Republican House member to sign on to be a co-sponsor, right? So there's different processes to do that. So it's not that anybody's saying this is a terrible concept or a terrible bill. It's literally probably half people didn't even see the email that came through. And so you got to keep working them. You got to we get so much legislation that comes through. It is difficult to catch everything. So that's why the advocacy part is so important consistently. So yeah. So sorry, Tim, I'm not sure which question you were trying to ask, but I answered it. Cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that, I think from our attendees' perspective, many of whom are students, the majority of whom actually are social work students in the university, and many of whom have never talked to their elected official before. So this will be first time, frequently a learning experience. But knowing that, that they very well just might not have seen the bill or or may just not even like it's not on their radar because, you know, because they just haven't gotten through their email of like requests, etc. I think can be a little bit reassuring. We got a question in about explaining the issue with the FBI clearances a little more. Rep. Abney, you'd be happy to handle that, or I know from our team, Angie Armbrust has been really good at explaining it in the past. So up to you.
Angie frames it so much better than I do. I'm gonna let Angie
No,
do
no
that bit
problem.
of it.
I've
Very
picked up this
technical.
question a few times over the years. So what the issue was, Pennsylvania was a number of a very small handful of states. I want to say maybe like 8 that didn't have legal a law in place that would allow an FBI background clearance for one of their state's residents to be transmitted to a third party, like a compact body, like an organization that would issue compacts or issue a compact license. So in that small number of states, new legislation had to be passed to give authority for the FBI to share that information for that state's residents. So it was just a really long, drawn out process, as you can imagine what it was like to corral the Pennsylvania State Police, the Pennsylvania Legislature, the governor's office, the Department of State, the commissioner over the state boards affected, getting all of those people on the same page, and then communicating to the FBI, and then waiting on the FBI's response back, and then communicating back. So that process spanned 2 different gubernatorial administrations. But kudos to the Shapiro administration for making it a really high priority when they came in to fix this once and for all. And really, they did really engage at the federal level to push really hard to, get that kind of tied up and wrapped up with a bow in place. Because there are a number of other compacts, interstate medical licensure compacts and nursing compacts that have been enacted for several years that Pennsylvania residents were not able to take part in. So that's where the pressure was coming for those to be enacted first, get the FBI background check fixed, done, and then let's talk about new ones like ours.
Yeah. And in none of the states where it passed was that an issue. So that's so that's an obstacle that we had to clear in Pennsylvania that that others did not, which has been interesting. And yeah, I see Tim's comment about that we get background checks all the time. It really was just a thing of like permission to give that information to somebody else, an outside third party, which is how those compact boards work. I did see the question about what are the 22 states, and somebody put in the link for the compact map, which is great. But I did want to just very quickly, since I figured it was relevant to everybody, I'll share my screen for just a second to show that map and where it is right now. The dark blue is the states where it passed and is now law. The light blue is the ones that have active legislation going right now in their current legislative sessions. Like I said earlier, many of which, like when I used to work in Florida for a while, the legislative session was in March and April, and that was it. So there's probably going to be several of those that are happening like within that short period. Pennsylvania is a abnormality in that we have a full-time 2-year legislative session. But yeah, that's what the map looks like. That website where the map is found that was shared is also a really great resource for all sorts of things, talking points, reviewing the actual legislation itself, news and updates. It was one of the ones created by the Council of State Governments that is kind of facilitating this effort. I do want to share the way that this works, answering a few questions that I get often about, like, how does this work? Once the compact is passed, like, you would be able to, once you get your social work license, you would be able to opt in to get the compact license. You would not have to get the compact license. The compact license would be an additional fee. Although, like, it's supposed to be a small fee in relation to the licensure fee itself. That's one of the things that the compact board is starting to work on when we talk about, like, those regs that are done by the board. But then if you sign on and get the compact license, you would be authorized to practice in all of the states that have signed on to participate. It doesn't get you licensed to practice everywhere in the country. There are some states, New York being one of them, that historically does not participate in any of the professional compacts. So they California being another one, although I know the California executive director is working very hard to change that and to get the social work compact passed in California and to really shift that tide. But you would be authorized to practice in any of those states, which means that, that could mean that you move there, or that, if you I know a lot of folks in Philadelphia, treat people from New Jersey or Delaware, and many of whom right now get active licenses in all three of those states so that they're able to see clients when they live on a border region. Similarly, in Pittsburgh, you might see folks from West Virginia or Ohio. But also certainly with telehealth. And a few examples. Anyway, I was going into how that works. So authority-wise, you're still you're still regulated by your home state. So I know one of the initial concerns that a lot of folks had with when compacts were initially filed was like, well, are we giving up control of our licensees as a state? Are we not going to have the ability to regulate who practices in our area? You're regulated by your home state, so you're still licensed in your particular state. So giving us as an example, you would have a Pennsylvania license, but then you would also have that compact license. If there was any disciplinary action taken in another state, that would be sent to the compact body. It would also be sent back to your home state, and then your home state would have the ability to review and decide and determine whether they want to take any further action on that. I know that has come up certainly in this political climate, where there are some states that are making different regulations about including about social work practice. One that really comes to mind is in the area of, like, reproductive health and abortion care, that in some states it's considered a practice violation to, aid and abet an abortion. And so that's been something that has been brought up significantly in relation to the compact, is like, well, what if I'm a Pennsylvania practitioner and I, like, assist a client in Texas with getting an abortion? What would that do to my Pennsylvania license? It might impact their ability to practice in Texas. Texas might take action in that, but then it would go back to the compact board, and it would go back to the Pennsylvania license board. And since in Pennsylvania, that's not unethical practice, there probably would not be any impact to the person's ability to practice in Pennsylvania. I'm going to check in with my group just to see if anybody else wanted to add on to that, specifically to talk about those those kinds of issues.
I don't have anything specific to add to that, but I did just want to address there's a couple questions in the chat um, around sort of why New York, Massachusetts, and Cali doesn't join. So what I was told was that their licensure regulations is usually what stops them from joining compacts, just because they have such different licensure regulations than most of the states in the US. And so this is why it's challenging for them to join other compacts. So it's not necessarily like, oh, we're against all compacts. It has more to do with like their licensure regulations and why it would be challenging to join the compact. So I hope that answers your question. I don't, if there's any other specific ones, I think Joanna, you did a really good job of sort of summarizing the compact bill, sort of the benefits. Rep. Abney, thank you again for being here and be able to sort of speak to what that process looked like, and also encouraging social workers that, again, LEAD is just one part of our advocacy. It's not end all be all, and so that we need to be consistent. And so we will have other opportunities for you all to participate that are very low involvement. I think sometimes we believe that advocacy has to be this huge grand gesture, and sometimes it's as easy as making a phone call. I'm not going to give that whole spiel because I realize there's a lot of people on here today that was on there yesterday. So you feel free to go and look at the recording from yesterday, but just to mention that we will be having district days again. We learned our lessons from last year around district days and how to make it more successful this year. So a lot of this information will be given to you at Lead Day this year. And if you are not following us on social media, please follow us on social media. We do a lot of great outreach for our members via email and newsletter. But for those of you that are not members, and I'm going to say yet, for those of you that are not members yet, a great way to stay up to date with what's happening around these bills and what NASW is doing is to follow us on social media. So we are on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're also on LinkedIn. So make sure to follow us on whatever platform that you use the most. And so Rep. Abney, I know that you have a very busy day. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation?
Sure. Well, again, thank you for having me. And I will say that, it is always disappointing to lose to Ohio on something. I know that Ohio has it, but we got to beat New Jersey. We got to beat West Virginia, right? So we got to get this done. But on a more serious note, I hope to see some of you on Tuesday. I look forward to it. I would just encourage you as you do your advocacy with different reps and senators. I know sometimes it can be a little intimidating if it's your first time kind of going up there, but I would say just remind you we are everyday average people just like you are, right? I got a wife, I got kids, I got real life challenges and issues, and you know what I mean. Don't look at us like we are somebody that's super too important that they can't have a casual conversation with you all. So. Um, I'm happy for you all. I'm really excited about this, and I'm hoping that when I come back to do this next year, that I will have some really positive information to share that we got this done. That is my fingers crossed that we'll be able to do that. So again, thank you all for your time and allow me into your space and welcome me into your space. And keep up the good work. And my phone is always on if you guys ever need anything.
Well, thank you so much for joining
Thank
us,
you.
and we really look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. I know you're scheduled to speak at our press conference, so you always give inspiring words. So we're looking forward to seeing you then.
I'll be there. All right, y'all. Have a good weekend. Take care. Peace.
All right. I see another question. The issue of if a state files a complaint, the other state would be able, yes. Some of this is still to be worked out in the regs as the compact board gets started. But the way it's been explained to me is that a particular state would be able to revoke compact access to their state as an individual. That would be one of those things that would be handled by the compact board to be like, oh yes, this person has a compact license but is not authorized to practice in these 3 states or whatever. but they wouldn't necessarily just revoke the compact license. And if your home state decides not to pursue the complaint, then then you're still definitely good for your state. One of the other issues that I wanted to mention, because it does relate to this social work compact, many of you have likely heard or may be familiar with the issue of the ASWB tests and the data that came out relating to that. That demonstrated that the tests had significant disparities in passage rates when it comes to race and ethnicity. Also, when it comes to like English as a second language, there were age related issues as well. So when that was all happening right at about the same time that the compact was being formed, the compact does require that in order to join the compact that you've passed a national exam. It does not 100% specify that it's the ASWB exam, although the ASWB exam is currently the only national exam. However, one thing that is likely for that, it does not necessarily mean that that we would currently in Pennsylvania, you have to pass the exam in order to get any of those licenses, but a lot of states some states are responding to that data and those issues by changing that and reducing the licensure requirements, taking out the need for passing the exam in order to get like the BSW or the entry level MSW license. Some of those states are some of the same ones that joined the compact. Colorado, for example, just changed both of those in 1 year, where they passed both of those bills at the same time. I'm sorry, my phone's ringing and it's out of reach, so I apologize for that. But just ignore that and I'll pass it on. I'll pass on my torch in a second. But the bill itself will not, the bill itself does require that you have to pass the test in order to join the compact. But for those states that eliminate those requirements, a person who wants to join the compact would still be able to go back in and take the test and pass the test, even if they weren't required to get it for their initial license, if that makes sense. Sierra, did you want to add any? Sorry, President McNeil, did you want to add anything to that discussion?
No, I think you summarized it. I think that was everything.
Okay, good deal. So yes, so anyway, talking about this issue does not, that is something a conversation that we're continuing to have in Pennsylvania. You may eventually see legislation related to that, like we have in other states. That's not where we are at this particular legislative session. But we do hope to get there eventually. But just to know that passing the compact does not necessarily preclude that sort of legislation coming up in future years. Did also want to mention, so talking points wise, when you're talking to your legislators, license portability is a big issue. Being able to bring any of those examples is frequently good. Some really good examples, just some anecdotal ones. Disaster relief is a big issue that I hadn't really thought of significantly until it was brought up by my colleagues from California and North Carolina. They're using that as significant issues for the natural disasters that happen in those areas. They're using it as a way of working to get the compact passed in their states. You know, when the fires are happening in California, or the floods that happened in North Carolina, both of those states, you know, had a need for social work services to come into their state. The governors of the states sometimes address those issues by like issuing a waiver or something else that says, you know, like normally people would have to be licensed in North Carolina to practice here, but we're going to waive that for the time being because of this crisis. But a compact, if the compact were already established, then there would already be a pool of people who were authorized to practice, without having to go through the delay of getting a waiver through. So talking about disaster relief is one more way that we can discuss this important point. On a more practical level, you know, for example, there was somebody who called my office, who I spoke with, who their client was considering a move to Pennsylvania. They live in Massachusetts. They're both the client and the current practitioner live in Massachusetts. The practitioner wanted to still be able to see the client when they left, and was asking about, like, was there a temporary license or a provisional license or anything that they could do to get a waiver for seeing their particular client. And basically, I had to talk to them about, like, well, you can choose to get a license in Pennsylvania. And if you choose to get a license, you know, there's a lot of, you know, your qualifications would continue, but you'd still have to pay the additional licensing fees, et cetera. So a big area of where it would make a difference is in like situations like that, where your clients are moving. There's rural situations where folks, you know, don't always have access to providers, and this like opens the gate of, you know, being able to find a practitioner who is in your the specialty that you need, you know, not necessarily being limited to just the people in your specific area. And then another big one, you know, and some of you may have this experience as college students. So you could use this as an example, even if it doesn't directly apply to you. But you know, if you're a college student who is going in a state other than where your home residence is, you know, like 3 months out of the, you know, you spend a good deal of your time at home and you spend a good deal of time at college. Both those are in different states. If you are seeing a therapist or working with a therapist, you know, you would either have to get a new therapist in your new state, or your therapist would have to be licensed in both places in order to have that continuity of care. So you know, if you have friends or family members who have been in similar situations, you can talk about that when you're meeting with your elected officials. But like Representative Abney said from the beginning, there's not a ton of opposition about this bill. You know, we can use our time with our representatives to talk about why it's important. If they agree that it's important, then definitely ask them to be a co-sponsor. If they don't seem to buy into like the urgency of it, then you may just want to ask them to support as opposed to saying like sign on as a co-sponsor. But I think where we can really make a difference is in that area of like getting attention to the bill, making sure that people know it's important, like getting some urgency behind it, and you know, and adding that bipartisan nature of co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate. And there are several meetings that are also with the House Professional Licensure Committee. For those for those meetings, if you're attending one of those meetings, you're going to want to make sure that you are talking to them about the fact that they're in the House Professional Licensure Committee. That will be on that information will be on the website where all of the appointments are listed. And also you're going to want to like ask them specifically to, to have the bill come up as quickly as possible and for them to vote in the affirmative, because they are the first line on that bill. Angie or Natalie, could I ask one of you to talk a little bit about like the committee process and what might be relevant, what they might need to know there?
Sorry, we're going to come off mute. Sure. The bill has been referred to committee, and once the committee decides to take action or move the bill, it will come up for a vote in committee. They'll hold a committee hearing. They're publicly available to view. The legislature has done a pretty good job post-COVID making those streamed live. So if it comes up, we send the notice out to your board. If you're curious as to when it is, it's also publicly available on the state legis website. But then the committee will take a vote on that bill, and they'll either approve or it'll fail or it'll pass. I would assume that this is a bipartisan effort, that it would pass unanimously out of committee when that does happen. And I will note that 8 days ago, the executive director of the committee did circulate your compact bill for comments to stakeholders, which tells me that it is absolutely moving along in the process to hit committee consideration in the near future. So even if, as Rep. Abney says, this doesn't get passed till the fall, they'll still work to move it through the process. Part of that FBI systems talking to each other issue, the staff and the legislators feel like that's a DOS problem, and that shouldn't stop us from moving these compacts along. So I think the committee process is interesting. If you've never seen a committee meeting, sometimes they're boring, sometimes they're exciting, but it will go to the full committee, and then it'll be sent to the House for consideration on 3 different days before it ultimately passes, and then goes to the Senate for the same process. And the committee in the Senate is called Consumer Protection. It's the Consumer Protection and something else. It's off the top of my head, escapes me, but it's very similar committee over there, except they also deal with utilities. So an odd split on the Senate side, but yes, that committee process is fairly straightforward on bills like this that have bipartisan support.
One thing that I think is interesting that is just handy to know, the bill has to pass in both the House and the Senate. But if the House passes the House bill and the Senate passes the Senate bill, that does not mean that it passed the House
Correct.
and the Senate.
Correct. It has to, one of those bills, it doesn't matter which one, if they're the exact same language, has to make it through the full process of both chambers, and then to the governor's desk to be signed. So yes, we often have a bill in each chamber, and that is to speed up the process to a degree, so that if one chamber starts moving bills and starts making deals on bills, they do that a lot around budget time. They'll have a package of things they want to get done that the other chamber would not normally agree to. And so then they, in order to get a budget deal, say, well, we'll give you this and we'll take this. So sometimes that helps to have a bill in each chamber, so that when those negotiations come down to it, if you can get yours in as part of a budget deal and get it done sooner, that is sometimes why. It also breeds bipartisan support and shows that your issue is really universal and that it's something everyone can support and get behind. So it does help to have that support in both chambers. And as Joanna has said, and Representative Abney, that we do have a Republican sponsor in the Senate. So that is absolutely points to that this issue isn't partisan and shouldn't be.
Which Pennsylvania is one of only a very small handful of states that currently has split government, meaning that that
I think
out
we're
of
the
our
only.
maybe although I think we at one point or up till the fall we were the only one. I think
Please,
Michigan
there.
had one of their chambers switch, and so they're in split government too. But yeah, we're either the only one or one of only like a couple that where we have different control of the governorship, the state legislature, and in particular with the state house and the state senate being in different parties. So the big thing that means is that, you know, the only thing that is going to get through this legislature, because it has to pass both the Democratic-led House and the Republican-led Senate, the only thing that's going to get through that gauntlet is bipartisan bills, which is one of the reasons why we've really been focusing on building bipartisan support and why we're glad that Senator Penny Cook agreed to carry the bill in the Senate. Yes, so especially like do definitely take notice of what party you're you know who you're going to see, who your appointment is with, and whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. If they're a Republican, it's even more important to try to get them to sponsor, like to become a sponsor, because we really want to demonstrate the bipartisan nature of this issue. Are there any other questions relating to the bill? Okay, not seeing any in the chat either. Okay, to sum up, so again, like just as a reminder, you'll get materials. As far as what I heard, there is from the rest of my team at NASW, the booklets all came in from the printer today, so we'll be spending some time tomorrow stuffing tote bags that you'll that you'll be getting when you come to lead. They'll have that little booklet in there along with a few other things. There'll be a sheet in there with all of the legislative appointments and what times they are. The times have been being scheduled as early as 12 and as late as 3:30. The 12 o'clock ones, if you're scheduled for one of the 12 o'clock ones, you're probably going to have to leave the rally early because, you know, in order to make sure that you get there on time. But you know, but do keep an eye out. We'll have all of those posted on the website, and you'll get the copy of the sheet in your bags. Those booklets also have talking points about each of the issues. They have frequently asked questions about each of the bills. They have like the list of all of the current sponsors, along with photos of who all the current sponsors of the bills are. Obviously, for that we had to pick like a certain date and run with it. So if there's anybody who signed on late, they wouldn't be included, but that would be the only exception. And then yeah, there's tons of materials that you can look over. Just keep an eye out on the website. But yeah, we want you to feel as prepared as possible for when you walk into the meeting room. But you know, the main thing is just to have that conversation and talk it through and be like, you know, and kind of expect that they're going to be friendly to your cause, because as we said, we haven't heard much opposition on this issue. It's just a question of like moving it forward to get it across the finish line so that we actually pass it in a timely manner. Tomorrow we'll be having one last one of these trainings. Tomorrow is more you know, talking about social work in particular, macro social work, advocacy, ethics, all of the like a little bit more philosophical than some of the trainings the rest of this week has been. You know, again, they'll be recorded after every and posted to the website after every session. But we thank all of you for being here today, and we're definitely looking forward to seeing you at LEAD.